much for being here this morning. I'd like to begin by introducing myself. My name is Diane Govinsamy, and I am the Director of Programs with the United African Canadian Women's Association. I'd like to begin today by just going over some housekeeping with regard to our session for today. I would kindly ask if you could please identify yourself by changing your name on your screens. Instead of iPhone, if it could be your name, that would be wonderful. Next, I would ask that you use the raise hand feature should you have a question, as well as I was thinking, Auntie Fumi, I don't mind. I think it'll be a really good option as well. If people want to put their questions in the chat as well, that could be another option if you don't want to actually raise your hand. And please mute yourself unless you are speaking. And now I'd like to move on to our land acknowledgement. Thank you. The United African Canadian Women's Association acknowledges that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory and ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Our relationship is based on a series of peace and friendship treaties between the Mi'kmaq Nation and the Crown, dating back to 1725. In Nova Scotia, we recognize that we are all treaty people. The United African Canadian Women's Association recognizes that African Nova Scotians are a distinct founding people in Nova Scotia who have been here and play a key part of the province's culture and history since 1605. At this moment, we are going to go into a minute of silence, and even as we observe this minute of silence, we do it in respect to everyone's religious beliefs. So at this time, a minute of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to today's seminar. It's so great to see everyone and taking time out and to come get insight and get informed. And we are really thankful to the presenters that take time off on a Saturday morning, busy Saturday morning, to come be with us. I will welcome everyone in the name of the United African Canadian Women Association. Our chair sends a regret. She won't be able to attend this meeting, sorry. So I'm the poor substitute this morning. Bear with me. My name is Fumi Joseph. I'm one of the 4 women that started this organization 27 years ago. We are a non-for-profit, community-based association with the objective of working diligently on meeting the needs of women of African descent and their families, in particular newcomers and the immigrant community as they make their new home in Canada. First, I would like to thank the Family Matters Subcommittee for working diligently to pull this session together. Thank you. This seminar, Family Bridging Cultures seminar today, aims to provide a platform for individuals and families of African descent to gain valuable insights, strategies, and practical tools to foster healthier and more robust family relationships. Please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. Is everybody okay? The Bridging Walls Parenting in Dual Cultures, as the name reflects, the theme of maintaining cultural roots while navigating the roots of parenting in a Canadian context could be challenging sometimes. It's just different. I shouldn't say it's challenging, it's different. So understanding the new norms will be really important. It suggests its journey of connection between the rich heritage of African values and the pathways of raising children in a new cultural environment. So I'm really looking forward to our presentation, to our presenters this morning as they share their knowledge with us. So I will hand it over to my sister, Dr. Tonya Akindoju, to moderate the presentations. Thank you. And introduce.
Thank you very much, Auntie Fumi, and good morning, everyone. And thank you for coming this morning. And so just to add to what Auntie Fumi said, why are we having this seminar? Well, for one, we know that many immigrants are unaware of the intricacies of the child welfare processes in Nova Scotia, which may seem daunting when families become involved with the system. So today, Sylvia, Chidi, and Gabriel will share with us how concerns about a youth or child's safety is identified and assessed through the screening process, intake, and long-term decisions that social workers make to ensure the safety and well-being of our children and youth. Scott will wrap up the process session by reviewing the Child Family Welfare Act and the resources available in our communities so no child falls through the cracks of a system meant to safeguard them. And will share how cultural sensitivity and the Afrocentric lens are considered. So during the question period, we hope you will ask questions which together will help uncover avenues for support, collaboration, and advocacy for safeguarding our children's future, no matter where they come from. So now it's time for me to introduce our speakers in no particular order. So Anne Simmons was born and raised in North Preston, Canada's most prominent Black community. Anne's lived experience can be found in the book Fighting for Change, edited by Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard. Anne has worked in the child and family well-being field for over 35 years. Before Anne became a social worker in 1995, she worked as a case aide and family support worker with Children's Aid Society of Halifax. Anne is currently the director of Afrocentric Child and Family Wellbeing Team and continues to establish this team. Anne is married to Calvin Simmons and they are blessed with 3 children, Sadin, Calvin Jr., and Tyler, as well as 3 grandchildren, Sahara, Cairo, and Egypt. Anne starts her day off with her favorite saying, "I'm blessed and highly favored." Welcome, Anne, today. Going on to Scott Clark. Clark is the proud father of 2 adult children and has been practicing social work in Nova Scotia since 1998. He has worked in child protection and with children in care and spent 13 years as a child protection intake supervisor before moving into child and family well-being specialist role. He has spent the last 2 years as the provincial coordinator of child profession. In his spare time, Scott is the associate head coach for the Cape Breton University's men's soccer team. Welcome to the seminar, Scott. Next, Gabriel Adioye has been working for the provincial government for over 15 years, and he started with the income assistance, employment support, and income assistance team, and currently he's with the child and family in long-term unit in Dartmouth. Gabriel is blessed with 3 children. Chidi Madakulam is a clinical social worker with 9 years of experience practicing social work in Canada. He holds a BSc and MSW from Dalhousie University. And Chidi worked with the Nova Scotia Works Employment Center for 4 years before joining this year's. Chidi also works part-time as a clinical social worker in IWK in various service areas throughout IWK Health. When not working, Chidi enjoys recreational activities, including traveling and his family. Last but not the least is Sylvia. Sylvia is a social worker and has been working for the past few years with the Department of Community Service. And without further ado, I will hand over the mic to Sylvia, who's going to start us off with the screening process within the Department of Community Services. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. And I started off working with the Department of Community Service around last year at the screening unit. And basically what we do at the screening unit, and before I go into what we do, I just want to touch on what we consider abuse and neglect in child welfare. So basically we will refer to a child being abused when there's an act of failure not to act that results in harm or potential harm to a child. And when caretakers or individuals in position of power fail to act or omit their action that results in jeopardy in a child's well-being. And neglect is, we consider neglect as failure of caregivers to provide for a child's basic need, such as food, shelter, clothing, and the likes. And importantly, both abuse and neglect have serious consequences on a child's emotional and physical and psychological well-being. So in screening, we have different types of different types of acts that we consider to as abuse. And examples of what we consider as abuse are listed here, like physical abuse, like physical discipline, parents or caregivers hitting their children, sexual abuse, risk of sexual abuse, lack of medical treatment, emotional abuse, risk of emotional abuse, mental and emotional development, domestic and family violence. This refers to when maybe couples, parents in the house are having conflicts and the children are present and they are witnessing all of this. So there's physical neglect, substantial risk of neglect, and there's child abandonment. And if a child under 12 years killed or seriously injured or caused damage to another, or a child under 12 injured or damaged properties with parents' encouragement. So when at screening, once we receive referrals like this, referrals can come from anywhere and everywhere. We receive referrals from different avenues like schools, community members, from the IWK. We receive referrals also from family physicians, and we have self-referrals too that for the few months that I work at screenings, I've taken referrals from people that will call to say, hey, I'm struggling in this part of parenting and I need help. But before I go into that, let me talk about the duty to report. Under the Children and Family Wellbeing Act, once a child is suspected of being abused, professionals have duties to report. And when we say professionals, we talk about schools, teachers, family physicians, therapists. Those are some of the people we consider as professionals. This category of people have a duty to report any suspected act of child abuse. And if a child has been abused or there's a risk that a child might suffer abuse in the imminent future. And if any person, like we have people too that works in maybe after school services like agency like YMCA and all of that, and they have notice of any grounds to believe that a child is being abused and is in need of protective services, they have a duty to make those referrals. And also, like I said, we have referrals from anywhere and everywhere. So everyone has a duty to immediately report even a suspicion of abuse to a child under 18 or younger. So you can report the abuse anonymously. And if you suspect a child is being abused or neglected, you are required to contact the nearest agency in your area where the child lives. It is best if you contact the agency by phone or in person. So moving on to where we get our referral sources. Like I said earlier, our referrals come from different places. We get referrals from schools, from family physicians, from therapists, from hospitals, from family members, concerned community members like neighbors, and people calling to asking for help. So most times we get asked, oh, who reported this to you? Where did you get this information? We are at no liberty to give that kind of information as to where our referrals come from. But then again, we receive our referrals from anywhere and everywhere. So once our reports come in at the screening unit, there's some factors we consider whether to investigate the referrals or not. And these are the factors we consider, like the reliability of the referral source, because we've received referrals that people will just call just to be malicious. They come making up stories about maybe a family member, a friend, or somebody they have issues with, and they call in just to create that picture of, oh, this child is being abused. So we look at the person that is calling, the reliability of the information that is being provided. And we look at the age and level of functioning of the child that is being reported to be abused, like a 6-month-old baby, a 2-year-old baby. They have no ability to self-protect or take care of themselves. So there are some categories of children that when we have their reports, given their age, we take their matters more seriously. Then we look at the information that's been provided to us. What is this report about? What does it entail? How serious is this report that we are getting at? And we'll look at relevant past history. Has this person been involved in the agency before? Have we received referrals of this like before? And the degree of direct or indirect evidence. And this means that the person reporting was a person present when the abuse took place, or was it from a third party? So these are the factors we consider whether to investigate or not. And having all of this information by the screening intake, we consult normally with our supervisor with all of the information we've had, the reliability, all of these factors, we look at them and determine whether we are going to investigate or not. If we are investigating, the next step is to look at our response time. How quickly are we going to respond? So we respond based on the order of priority. There are some referrals that come in that will respond within the hour. And these are high-risk, life-threatening reports. For example, there was a time we got this report that a child, the parents left, the child was a baby in the living room, and both of the parents went outside to have a smoke. While they were outside, I think the baby was crawling, and the baby got trapped in between the couch in the living room. And the parents were unaware. By the time they came back into the living room, the baby had passed out, was unconscious, and they had to call 911. It was a very high-risk situation. And when we got the report, we responded within the hour to know what happened, whether the parent negligent or not. So for some other high-risk, dangerous but not life-threatening scenarios will be like maybe family violence. Parents are fighting in the home, the kids are present. And when we get reports like that, that there's physical violence going on in the house within parents and the children are there, we respond sometimes within 2 days or same day, depending on the seriousness of the report that we get. So our response time, like I said, depends on the severity of the report we are getting and how the response will impact the child in the home. So once the response time has been determined and we are investigating, we then hand it over to the intake team. And that is where our job from screening lies, getting all of this information, determining if we are going to respond or not, then moving on to the intake team. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chidi. I am intake social worker, and I've been doing this for the past 4 years. What we do basically in the intake is once the referral comes in, we review it at the intake and we decide if there will be an investigation or not. And in the intake team, we have between 6 to 8 weeks to complete an investigation. But most times in the intake you could have some files that will have up to a year. So basically, when the screening departments get a referral, they pass it down to the intake team. I just want to make you guys understand how the family and the children and family wellbeing is structured. In Nova Scotia, we have a different region, and different region operate differently. The Dartmouth office where I work is part of the central region. In the central region, we have about 4 offices. We have 2 offices in Halifax and 2 in Garland and 1 in Sackville. So the two offices in Halifax are the Bayers Road office, the Gordon office. Then in the Dartmouth office where I work, we have 2 offices. Then in Sackville, there's an intake office in Sackville. So when referral comes from the screening unit, when the referral comes from professionals like Sylvia stated, they are usually told that their identity may be reviewed. For instance, the professional like social workers or schools, they usually get what we call acknowledgement letter. It's just a letter to let them know that the investigation will be investigated. Then in the process of reviewing investigation, if the investigation will be investigated or not, social workers supervisor and the intake social worker will review this referral before knowing whether we'll be going to be investigated or not. And we'll review it into parameters. Now, we review it based on decision point 1 and decision point 2. As Sylvia mentioned, decision point 1 is going through the referral, making sure that the referral source is credible, knowing the age of the child, if it is something that warrants immediate response or not, seriousness of the referral. Then we'll also go through the history. Then decision point 2, like Sylvia said, is the response time. Now, the screening departments may receive a referral, and the referral comes into the intake team. The intake team, even if the referral was accepted for investigation, the intake team can decide not to investigate it. So every referral that comes through screening, most times we will do what we call NI, not investigated in the intake team. So before this is accepted, the social work supervisor and the intake the social work intake supervisor and the intake social worker will review the file. Basically, every referral that comes through professionals would basically be investigated. Now, when I said referral may not be investigated, you may have multiple referral from multiple people. We may decide to investigate a specific one, but decided not to investigate, the other one. Now, the response time, with the example Sylvia said about the child being trapped and child passing out. So when we get such referral, we will uphold with the DP2, the response time that the intake has already, given to it. So now, and also if this child is already in care, for instance, if a child has been taken into care, maybe this child is in a foster home and there's a referral, that comes in, the social worker, because in child protection, we have multiple social workers that do multiple things, like screening department have a social worker, we have a social worker who work with intake, we have foster care social worker, we have adoption social worker, we have child in care social worker. Now, whereby a child who is already in care or who is in a foster care, there is a new referral on this child, we will contact the social worker who is in foster care social worker of that specific child before we will go ahead and do investigation. Next slide, please. There are 9 decision key points that intake social workers basically look before we will do an investigation start. Now, I've already talked about decision point 1, which is either we are going to be investigating the referral or not. Decision point 2 is the response time. Now decision point 3 is to determine whether the investigation is substantiated or not substantiated. Now, in the case of decision point 3, when a referral is substantiated, now this file could be closed at intake, or the file could be referred to the long-time social worker who will implement services. Now, as a parent in a dual culture, whenever an intake social worker investigates your file and tells you that your file is going to be closing at the intake, you could ask for a closing letter just to have a closure that the file closed at intake, that it didn't go further than that. For instance, if you get some investigation about first-time offenders who your child went to school and reported that my mom or my dad spanked me, in that first, involvement, intake social worker will just provide you with some community resources and tell you and give you zero physical tolerance in Canada, that parents are not supposed to do some certain things to their kid. So when that file is being closed at intake, request for a closing letter, it doesn't really take much. It's just for social worker to give you a letter telling you that that your file closed at intake and that there will be no further involvement. Now, this same thing happened in every social work location, even if it is within the central, the western region, or any other region. Now, request for a closing letter. Now, the next decision point is whether the file is going to be open to long term or not. Now, if a file is going to be open to the long term, it means that there is a substantial risk of harm on the child. And before that goes, we'll do what we call risk management conference. Risk management conference is a meeting between 2 supervisors, the long-term supervisor and the intake supervisor, and the 2 social workers will stay together and say, yeah, this family will need some services. For instance, an immigrant family who came and they were being abusive to their children, or mom and dad are having some conflict due to financial issues. So this file may go to the long-time team. Now the long-time team will implement services and ongoing services, for this family. And the file will move from the intake team to the long-time team. So my senior colleague Gabriel is going to be talking more about what they do in the long-time team. Now the next decision point is a case, to meet a level of risk. That is decision point 5. The next one is decision point 6, which is respect to court action. For instance, there may be some time where the intake team may determine to implement what we call non-party supervision order. Maybe mom and dad have been very, very violent in the home. Then one of the parents may be removed. And once that is done, we will implement what we call non-party supervision order. So that means going to the court and making sure that mom and dad, are being subjected to do some, services. So that is decision point 6. Now, decision point 7 is physically removing child from home. Now, at this point, this is what we call apprehension. So decision point 7 is more or less apprehension. Now, the decision is being made to remove a specific child from home. So at that point, there is substantial risk of this child. This child cannot stay in this home. So that is when decision point 7 is being made. Now, decision point 8 is to return the child from the home. So when decision point 8 is being made, family has met all the requirements, and that this child is now, will be brought back home. Now, the number 9 is decision point 9, that is closing of the file. So at this point, this file has been closed. Now, at this point, also request for closing letter. So when a referral comes from screening, come to intake, the file may close at intake, which is decision point 3. It may close here, or if there are substantial risks, this file could move from decision point 1 to decision point 9. And all this process can happen within 1 year, it can happen within 6 months, it can happen within 6 years. So it doesn't matter the duration of the time. There may be a referral that comes in and it runs from decision point 1 to decision point 7, where a child will be instantly apprehended. Now, decision point 1 to 4 and 9 will be considered in consultation with casework supervisor. Now, at this point, intake social worker will not holistically make all these decision points. It must be in consultation with the supervisors. Why decision point 5 to decision point 8 must done through the risk management conference. I talked about the risk management conference, which involves consultation. It's called a case conference between the supervisors of both intake and long-term. The next step is an investigative step. Now, when referral comes in from the screening, before intake social worker goes around and start investigation, there must be an investigative step. Now, first of all, is to review the file history. For instance, if it is referral of family that have had multiple involvement, so, and this is probably the 4th or the 5th involvement, the investigation plan, the supervisor, they may decide to maybe go ahead and remove the child, or they may decide to not to be more intrusive. They can decide to also be very, very intrusive. So the history of referral will, the history of family will determine the level of investigation at every point. Now, the first investigative step is usually to interview children at school. The essence of interviewing children at school is to remove the influence from the parents. Now, when a referral comes in that a child reported that she's been abused, or mom and dad are fighting at home, this child will be interviewed at school. And at this point, we don't need parent consent to interview the children at school. We have a protocol of interviewing children at school, which I will be presenting on the next slide. Now, the second stage is contacting the police for joint investigation. Now, when a referral comes in from the screening that is of sexual abuse on a child, now sexual abuse may lead to criminal conviction. So at this point, the intake social worker doesn't go ahead and interview the child. This case must be referred to a police officer. Now, there will be a joint investigation. The police and the intake social worker, or the long-term social worker, or the foster care social worker will have to interview this child, and this child have to be recorded. Then also, if there is a referral of a physical injury on the child, that may lead to conviction in the future. So at this point, the referral must go to the police. Social worker must consult the police before investigation, goes around. Now, when the police is involved, the police will basically investigate the criminal aspect, while the social aspect will still be conducted by the intake social worker. Now, the next stage is when you interview the children at school, you attend the home unannounced. For instance, some of you who live in the Sackville, Dartmouth, or within the central region, you see a social worker coming into your house unannounced and knocking on your door and telling you that they spoke with your children, or they have interviewed their children at school. So that is the essence of that. Attending home unannounced and interviewing children. Now, when mom and dad is involved, if it is like a single mom whom the dad is not involved in their life or is not involved in the life of the children, only mom will be interviewed. But whereby the child have contact with dad, the child will definitely have to, the father will definitely have to be interviewed. Even if the child doesn't reside in Canada, sorry, even if the biological dad doesn't reside in Canada, the biological child, the biological father have to be contacted for them to know that the child is being interviewed. Now, contact any relevant collateral. Relevant collateral, they are basically professionals. So during the course of investigation, family will sign consent for intake social worker to contact collateral professionals like physical family doctor. The essence is just to understand if this child if there's any report or medical report of this child, you know. Then also most times we ask for family members, sorry, community members, you know. There was in the course of talking to a community member, you may even get another referral. For instance, let me give an example of incident I had recently. I'm investigating a family and they gave me consent to speak with family doctor. Then they gave me two consent to speak with a community member. In the course of speaking with this community member, the community member now told me that this family, he has observed them multiple times abusing their child. Now, that's generated another referral. At this time, this referral doesn't have to go to screening, but it came through the intake. So another referral with a new MPP. MPP is called Major Presenting Concern. For instance, if I'm investigating family violence and in the process of talking to a community member whom this family gave me a number to talk to, the community member told me, oh, I've observed them abusing their child. I've observed them doing drugs. I've observed them doing so things. Now, a new referral is being generated, but this referral didn't go through screening. It's still within the intake team. So a new investigation is being established. So within the intake team, I still have to do another referral based on the new MPP. Another one is assessment of risk. Now, in the course of this investigation, safety plan will be provided. For instance, if it's like a family violence, safety plan whereby mom and dad will not have contact in presence of the children, or whereby the family will be told not to use physical discipline on the child. So some of this safety plan is usually done through the intake or through any of the social worker investigating specific cases. But within the course of that investigation, intake social worker will consult continuously with the supervisor. Now the next slide is investigative step still goes on. Now, when the investigative step is being reviewed, like I said, it will now determine if you're going to be more intrusive. For instance, if it's a family that have multiple history, social worker may decide to look at this history. In the course of looking at the history, it may be that this family have a violence history. Social worker may decide to go with the police during initial investigation at the home, just to be not to be, you know, at the risk. Now, Halifax Regional School Board, they have a protocol that when a social worker who wants to investigate a child in school calls, what you need is just to show your ID card as an intake social worker. You will be provided a secure place to interview a child. In the course of interviewing a child, when you finish interviewing a child, you go home and discuss the referral with the family members. So like I said, you don't need a consent from parents to interview their children at school. So this is done, the investigative step, once it is being determined and approved by the intake supervisor and the intake social worker, the investigation process happens seamlessly. Now, there is a guideline in interviewing children, a protocol for interviewing children. First of all, social workers who are of African descent, we work within the anti-oppressive cultural awareness lens. We understand that most African or African immigrants, have had some multi-generational or have some trauma in their life. So when we interview children at school, we don't just ask questions. For instance, when a child discloses to a teacher that she's been abused, we don't just start asking questions about the abuse. We try to create some rapport. We try to build relationship with a child before speaking to them. I have some experience when I talk to kids in school that would tell me, my mom and dad asked me not to speak to social workers, and I usually explain to them that yes, my job as a social worker is to make sure that you're safe. In the process of interviewing them, you try and build some rapport with the children. Sometimes we do give them interview rules. I don't just want to make an assumption, because when you're interviewing these children, at school, it may go through the court process. So you just want to make sure that you are not putting the children into an undue stress. So that's why we created this. We have this protocol of interviewing the children, not to ask questions that are kind of intimidating. We ask an open-ended question and prompt them to tell me more. For instance, I could say, tell me more about what happened at home. You see children talking about something that happened at home that you can't even imagine. Social workers in intake, in long-time team, or foster care social workers, we have been trained how to interview children at school. So when you ask questions, you see children who tell you multiple things that happened at home, but as within the intake team, we only focus on the MPP, what we're investigating. Every other thing the children tell us is just, trying to create rapport with them. Then after interviewing children, of course, protocol demand that you must review the referral with the parents same day. So when you also go home and interview in your families, we apply the same process. Before going home, you already know the MPP, you already know what are the major presenting, problems. So for instance, family violence, when you go home, you ask mom and dad, they're able to tell you, you listen to them without, judging them. Then if it is, like I said, something that involves, police referral, you will have to refer to the police. Now, there's an example I want to give. For instance, if a sexual abuse happened in a home, or for instance, a child disclosed that a family friend sexually abused me. Now, and this family friend is not part of the family, and this alleged perpetrator has his own child or has his own children, but he doesn't live in the house. So a fresh referral will there will be a fresh referral, because this other family member who sexually abused a child have his own children. So a fresh referral will be initiated from the intake team or any social worker that is investigating this. And a child who is between 12 and 17 years old who sexually abused another child, and this child live in another home, and there are other children involved in the house, this have to also be considered. Now, I just want to use this slide to myth and fact about child protection. I want to use this slide to demystify the preconception that's about social workers. Yes, social welfare does do apprehension. Social workers, intake social workers or social workers do child apprehension, but social workers only apprehend children when they are at imminent risk. When there's an evidence that there is a risk on this child, that is that point that children will be apprehended. There's another mix that child welfare social workers mainly rescue children from abuse. That is true. We rescue children from abuse, but most children placed in foster home, some of them are found to be victim of physical harm, and some of them are also found to be victim of sexual abuse. There's another mix that there's another myth that social workers only investigate children at risk of harm. children at risk of harm are being removed from their from their families when the concern is being substantiated. Now, when a child is being removed from from home, families are usually being asked for a family member where the child can go to. For instance, when there's a decision point 7 where a child will be removed from the home, community services will ask you for a kinship family member where this child can go to. You will always be allowed to make, to ask you, do you have a safe place where your child can go, rather than removing your child and putting your child in institution like foster homes or residential home. Now, the final myth I want to demystify is that placing children in foster care improve their well-being. No, placing children in foster care doesn't improve their well-being. There are some foster care systems that they may not be adequate. So family members will usually be asked, for a family member where they feel that the children can be, can be safe. Those are the places where the children will go to. Now, the final slide is the end of intake investigation. Now, when an allegation is substantiated, next slide, please. When an allegation is substantiated, the file will now move from the intake team to the long-term team. Now, but when there may be some referral that are not substantiated, but a criminal charge is being led by the police. So the file may move from the intake team to the long-term team, but the police may still decide to charge a family member. So at this point, I'm going to allow the long-time social worker to talk more on what happens at the long-time team. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chidi. And you've done so well to cover some of the things that we do together. And I believe that people at this point are quite following the process from the intake, from the consolidated screening to the intake and then to the long term. As the name implies, long-term protection unit, what we basically do, you can get an understanding of it from the word long-term. The intent is to make sure that whatever the concern, the child protection concern is to make sure that you put in the work to stop and to get the file closed with Chidi. And you try all your best so that your file doesn't get transferred to me or to the long-term protection unit. But oftentimes, that's usually not the case. People's file get transferred to the long-term protection unit when we have a child protection concern, which could be what Yeye, as Silver Yeye has already told you. It could be a physical harm or neglect or risk of abuse due to domestic violence or inadequate parenting skill. It could be substance abuse. And sometimes it might be an unfit living condition. So when we get, when the intake department has already investigated and substantiated these concerns, then the files get transferred to the long-term protection unit. Before the file is transferred to the long-term units, Chidi has already mentioned to you that there is going to be a risk management conference between two supervisors to determine whether the file is fit to come to the long-term unit because of the services and support that may be beneficiary to this family. Not all the files that are being deemed to come to long-terms are accepted in the long term, but the determination is dependent on whatever the outcome of the risk management conferences. So when the file made it to the long term, the first thing we try to do is to do what we call a transfer visit. And this is done in conjunction with the intake department so that we can have a smooth transition of a file from the intake to the long-term unit. So we will schedule a meeting together with the intake, like Chidi and myself. We will schedule a meeting with the family, and then we will go there so that Chidi can introduce me or any other person with the long-term unit that is assigned to that file to the family. In some cases, we may have a family that is dealing with a safety plan that in order to mitigate the risk that they are dealing with, both husband and wife may have to live separately. So I always try as much as possible to make sure that during my transfer visit, I go to both houses, see wherever the parents are, in order for us to allow for transparency and objectivity. So when we meet with the family, Chidi's intake will let them know why we are involved and what they tend to benefit from the long-term department, usually in terms of support and services to mitigate the child protection concern. After the transfers visit, then we would do what is called the case plan. You can go to the next slide. Because when we are during the transfer visit, we will have told the family that we need to know the required intervention in order to mitigate the concern. And after they've accepted that we've intervened into their family life, then we would do what we call a case plan. By case plan, we mean that we have to have a strategy to work with this family. Case plan, as the name indicates, usually requires a goal. What is the objective? What is the goal to be achieved? What is the outcome that you might want to have with that family? Depending on what the child protection concern is, you have to have a set of goal in your mind to work with in order to get the family to where they're supposed to be. So the case plan will consist of a goal. We will have objectives. What objectives do you want to accomplish with this family? What kind of tasks are supposed to be performed by these families and the social worker or the agency or the service provider? So everything will be spelled out in the case plan so that we are all on board as to how the agency is going to assist the family with support and services. So that is to determine which services will be of most benefit to the family will depend on several factors, including what Chidi has already mentioned, so that I will not waste your time to go over it. Sometimes we have to consider the family's past involvement with the agency. And oftentimes with my experience, what I found is that file tends to drag when a family who is dealing with a child protection concern are not showing insight and cooperation with the agency. And again, we have some personal preferences that might be considered before we determine what kind of help or services this family has to get. Cultural consideration is another thing. So when we do all that, sometimes we realize that it is even very difficult to move this family ahead, that the child, maybe if the risk is so high, next slide, please. So if the risk is too high for the children in the family, we attempt to work with the family to identify another caregiver with while the parent address some concern. So what we do is that, based on what to collaborate with what Chidi said, we may be forced to ask the family to put forward a third party so that we can work with that person who is going to help to have the child away when we try to remove the child from the family home. It might be part of our safety plan for the families that the child is removed So part of the myth is that oftentimes we try, the end goal of the agency is always to safely unite the family, but oftentimes, or this is not always possible. So we may have to remove if the risk is too high. So the family will propose what we call an alternative caregiver. And if there is no one to act in that capacity, if they can find any other third party to help in this situation, then the child will be placed in the temporary care of the minister of the community services. And that entailed all these court processes that Chidi has talked about. So finally, social worker, we try to maintain contact with families and service providers to ensure that services that are benefiting the families and that the initial protection concern why the families were referred to the agency is removed and mitigated, and so that the file can be closed. And that is, in summary, a condensed role or the responsibilities and duties of the long term. In summary, that is what we tend to do there. We work with the family by providing them with support and services to ensure that the initial child protection concerns that warranted the agency's involvement are mitigated so that the family's file can close and the families can function independently. Thank you.
Good morning. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. Very important topic, and a topic in an area that we would like to inform and educate as many people in terms of the work that we do and the value of the work that we do. So I want to thank Sylvia, Chidi, and Gabriel for giving a fantastic overview of exactly how our work progresses. And one of the key messages that they gave was in terms the fact that as we move along, even from the initial review of a referral, we need to have grounds. We need to have legislated grounds to actually go and knock on someone's door, to go and interview a child at school. Our work is heavily legislated. We're mandated to do this work under the Child and Family Services Act. So, as Sylvia mentioned, right away we need to we can't just go and speak to anyone unless we actually have concerns that are documented, that are logged, and that fit within the legislation that we're mandated to practice from. And then as Chidi explained, going out and taking those steps to work with families, to speak with children, to speak with family physicians, teachers, other family members that are involved. That's mandated within what we do. Right on through to opening a file, and where the file would be, family would be working with Gabriel. We would need to have clear legislated concerns, and that's a way of ensuring protection for us and for families that we work with, that that there's not any misuse of power, abuse of power by our staff. And that it's clear that what we're doing is legislated. So, as I mentioned, the Child and Family Services Act is a piece of legislation that came in 1990, actually, and it's been revised a few times. The last revision was in 2017, and a lot of changes came about in 2017, which have moved us forward. A lot of those changes were based on research, and evidence-based research in terms of continuity for children, best practice approaches, and enabling us to work more closely with family and their family members in their community. Prior to 1990, for example, when our legislation was written, a lot of power by individual social workers and a lot of I guess, discrepancy across our province in terms of how child protection was practiced. In came the legislation, gave us guidelines, gave us principles to practice from. And as we've progressed to 2017, we've done so much better work with, especially with communities and recognizing the value of working with families. And we've, Gabriel had mentioned our alternative family plans and situations where children that come into care are with family members or with family friends. And that is something that wasn't in effect before 2017, and we've made those some of those shifts, and our legislation is going to be, it's in the process of being reviewed in 2024 into 2025, and we're looking for feedback from people who have experienced our work, who have been involved as staff, as families who have been involved in the child protection side of things, or former children in care. So we're listening to try to inform our practice and move it into a better realm. Over the last year, we've worked diligently on providing a new practice framework. And one of the things that I say about the practice framework is that it's taken our social workers and our practice from, doing to people to working with people. It's been a big step in the right direction for us, recognizing that, people and families, they're the experts. They're the experts in terms of how things should be working within their family, and what support they have around them. We are evolving. We're constantly trying to improve our practice, improve our policies. We've gone through the last year as well of rewriting our policy manual to ensure that our policies and our practices align to the need. Oh, sorry, somebody had muted me there. Sorry. So we've we're going through an exercise of rewriting our policy manual and our procedures now to ensure that what we do lines up to how we want to do it in terms of working with families and communities and sharing that support. Our work is very intrusive, and it's we have highly skilled, highly sensitive social workers, and you've seen three fantastic social workers here that spoke before I did. They care about the work that they do, and we've constantly try to put them into positions where they're helping families. It's one of the things that we strive to do is obviously make sure that when we become involved with families, that by the time we're finished our work, they're in a much better situation than when we initially started to work with them. So, one of the things that I hope to see happen from this morning as well, when it's time for the questions or comments, is hearing from people on this call, hearing experiences that they've had or that they've heard of, both good and bad, in a way for us to take that back and look to you know, affect change within our policy and practice. And that's, in terms of my role as the coordinator of child protection, that's one of the things that I'm tasked with is to, you know, constantly meet with people, listen to people, and hear what community members are saying about our work in an effort to improve our services to people in Nova Scotia. Within the Child and Family Services Act, you know, there's three main purposes, and the first and foremost is to protect children from harm, and you know that's something that, in my opinion, in this province, that we do an excellent job of, and identifying risk, identifying situations that where we need to intervene, and going out and ensuring that children are safe. The next two pieces are promoting the integrity of the family, and then assuring the best interest of the child is always at mind. The aspect of promoting the integrity of the family, that is something that we're doing much better at, but we still have room to improve, and it's part of some of the newer interventions that we've had. You know, for example, Ann Simmons will be speaking next, our Afrocentric team. Our prevention and early intervention team, we, you know, we're constantly adding supports within our system to ensure that we're promoting the integrity of the family, trying to do whatever we can to keep families together, and those families that unfortunately where children come into care, we're doing everything we can to reunite them and get them back together where possible. With regards to definitions within the Child and Family Services Act, you know, Sylvie, Chitty, and Gabriel did a fantastic job and left very little for me to kind of elaborate on. But one of the things that I wanted to speak on is you know, the definition of a child within our legislation. And in Nova Scotia, that's anyone under the age of 19. And one of the things that we changed in 2017 when our legislation was amended was opened up the ability for us to work with and support youth ages 16, 17, and 18. You know, prior to 2017, you know, there was that in the legislation, but there wasn't the ability to support that in a practice standpoint. And we've made significant changes there. You know, we've recently, back in December, we increased the support that we've made available to that age group. So we've ensured that, you know, financially we're supporting youth between 16 and 18 that are not living at home, and trying to get, you know, those youth off the streets and into you know, situations, boarding situations, rental situations, situations where they're not being harmed or being abused or manipulated by, you know, people out there that have seen these children be at risk. You know, as I mentioned, for you know, the support services and spoke about the Afrocentric team that Ann next will give a great overview of. Our youth supports program, as I mentioned, for that 16 to 18 age group, we have extensive services that are in place within the community. Youth outreach services across the province for youth that are at risk. Within our child and family well-being, we have a fantastic program called our Family Support Program, which is an excellent program that provides families with education and hands-on learning in a variety of different areas, from you know, budgeting, from general parenting, from helping new parents with newborns, you know, any type of discipline related issues, limit setting, those sort of things, and all the way through to helping families cope with, the impacts of domestic violence. Our family support workers are fantastic in terms of linking the families that we work with to resources and supports in their communities, which is another aspect through our prevention and early intervention program that is ever expanding. As we listen to people that we work with and community members identify gaps of services in communities, we work closely with them to try to fill in those gaps and provide services that families need within their community. So, we work with our friends at education, especially through their Schools Plus program. We work with health and justice and all different departments to make sure that we are providing a service that supports families. With regards to some of the numbers, I'm a numbers person. I like statistics, and I recognize that not everybody does, but I think to help kind of put things into perspective within this province, last year in 2023 we had just about 18,000 referrals. So that's back to Sylvia's role, that's 18,000 calls in this province that social workers that in Sylvia's role review these referrals and make decisions. Do we investigate or do we not? And about 60% of those referrals end up being investigated. So a pretty significant number. Of those, roughly about 50 to 60% of those situations are what we call substantiated, that we've found that that a child has been abused, or that there is risk of that child being abused. So again, you can see the high number of calls that we get. Not all of them are accepted, and then not all are being found that there is risk. And when we do find that there is risk or something's happened to a child, not all those files get opened. For example, in this province, we have roughly about 1,000 families that are receiving long-term services. So, social workers such as Gabriel, there's roughly about 1,000 families in this province that are receiving those types of services. So you can see how the numbers are coming down and down in terms of having the ability to, or the need to intervene with a family, and then the numbers in terms of that we would actually have open files with. With regards to children coming into care, in the province currently, there's about 243 children that are in temporary care in this province. So when you go from 18,000 referrals down to 243 children that are in care, we and community and families are doing a good job of keeping families together. Our alternative family care, we have more children that can't be at home with their parents. We have about 360 children that are living with family members or friends in their community, and not in foster homes. So again, that was a program that we didn't have before 2017. So that 360 some odd children, they would be in foster care now. And so we would listen to our communities and developed a program to help support family members and friends and community members care for children that unfortunately cannot be home. So it's less of an emotional toll on children that can't be at home, that they're with an auntie, or they're with their grandparent or, you know, a close family friend. So, you know, we've listened, we've responded, and there's many children in this province that are benefiting from the fact that we've changed our processes. As we move forward in 2024, you know, one of the aspects that we're really trying to focus on this year and moving forward is working more with families in a preventative way. You know, trying to link families with their community, supports that are available there, so that they don't need to be involved with our child protection system. So again, listening to people in Nova Scotia in terms of what supports do families need, what you know, what's available for you know, families that you know, a family in Yarmouth that needs support that's not available. That's something that we through our prevention and early intervention program work to identify the supports that, you know, do we have to bring something from Halifax? Do we need to bring something from somewhere else, or do we need to create something that's needed in that program? So Chidi had mentioned, you know, myths and myth busters and that, and that's a significant piece for the work that we do. I always say that you know, people criticize us for either doing too much, for example, taking a child into care, or for doing too little, possibly not investigating or working with a family. But one of the key pieces around that is the lack of education or lack of information that other people have. You know, we make decisions on a daily basis, you know, as was reviewed by the three presenters beforehand. So we need to continue to do and take part in forums such as this, and you know, reach out to people and explain what we do, how we do it, so that communities and families are aware of what we do. Unfortunately, a lot of the things that messages that hit the media or social media are around some of the less than ideal situations that we've been in. You know, there's a lot of good stories out there with regards to the work that we do. And you know, unfortunately, not a lot of people want to stand up or put a post on social media or Facebook and say, you know, that they had great interactions with their child protection social worker, because of, you know, a lot of times because of the stigma that's attached to that. So, you know, I've been in this work for almost 30 years now, and Anne's been doing it a little longer than I have been, but you know, we're both in this work because the same as you know, Sylvia, Chidi, and Gabriel, you know, we care. We see the value of this work. You know, we care about families and children, and want to ensure that you know, we're doing everything that we can to meet the needs. If you want, I can jump into the chat. I see that there's been a number of questions there. I don't know if you'd rather us as a group answer those after, or would you?
Why don't you let Anne finish and then?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'll pass it on to Anne. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Scott, Sylvia, Chidi, and Gabriel. I'm certainly I'm blessed to be in this platform with many of you. I come as an individual, as the director of the Afro-Centered Child and Family Wellbeing team here at the department, to say that we have come a long way from where I know where I started and where the department is going. And certainly the department did and does recognize that there were gaps in the system when it came to serve children and youth and family of African descent. So the department recognized an effort to improve the services and experience of the children and the youth and family of African descent. They created a team, the Afrocentric team. The team is comprised of the director, which is me, and I have two child specialists that covers the programs and the services currently. It is a provincial scope division, which serve the entire province. And one would say, why? Why was this team created? And I'm going to go back because the department recognized through their journey that there were gaps. There were gaps. So how do we fill those gaps? And came up with the creation of this team because they heard from the community, they heard from families, they heard from workers, they heard from youth that service pertaining to the African child and youth was not put in place. So throughout the province of Nova Scotia, there is currently right now 2 specialists, and hopefully, I'm praying that we be able in the future to hire 2 more because it's getting busy. As I indicated, the team is provincial scope. So one would say, well, how do one reach into this team? So we do have family members who can reach in. We have individuals who is involved in the child and family well-being themselves reaching in. We have professional reaching in. We have community members reaching in who says, I know this family, or I have a family member. And we have workers reaching in and supervisors reaching in now, saying, I'm working with a family of African descent. I want to ensure that I'm providing the adequate and culturally attentive service. One of the things that the department has done in the last, I think it was a year and a half, how do we know that we're dealing with a family of African descent? So on the integrated case management system they put in is the demographics detail. So workers have to ask the question, what is your race? And from that demographic detail, one would know that this family has identified as a person of African descent, Black, Caribbean, or in their local identity, who they are. That would help the worker to reach into the Afrocentric unit saying, look, I'm working with this family in terms of the investigation, in terms of case planning, what services and support can I put in place to ensure that this family or this youth is getting the cultural attentive service that is required. One of the things that I want to note is that not all files should be open when it comes to child and family well-being. And Scott alluded to it, and I believe Chitty alluded to the prevention, early intervention. There are times when families just probably requires services from the community, from their local family resource center, or some of the services that's being offered within the community. And that would help in terms of family, in terms of dealing with whatever issues they're dealing with. The other service that we do have is the Family Plus program, but there is an African Nova Scotian Family Plus program, which is an intense parenting program where a parenting person, African Nova Scotian or person of African descent, is in the home intensely and is available 24 hours, and including weekends, to work with the parent to deal with whatever's been identified or mitigate the issue in terms of their parenting or whatever they're dealing with. And that's through the Family Services Association, and that is called the Family Plus program. And they do have one designated for the ANS, or people of African descent. So when we look at the services, one would say, again, the Afrocentric child and family well-being, how do workers reach in? And I just alluded to that a little bit. Intake can reach in, screening can reach in, not screening, but intake, once they deem that the family has identified as African descent, they can reach in and ask, what services, how can we ensure that we're putting in culturally attentive services and support for this family? And the specialist, which I have 2 currently, can say, have you considered this? Or the worker and the supervisor themselves may have already applied the lens, and we say, fine, just continue on what you're doing. So the team is, I say brand new, but we've been up and running for, I can say, for myself, is going on be 2 years in August, but certainly in November of 2023, the 2 specialists did come on. It's just started. It hasn't just started, but for having workers, is very busy, which is great. Busy in the sense that social workers are reaching in, and as I indicated, supervisors are reaching in. We have community members, family member reaching in with the consent of the individual if they're involved with child and family well-being. One of the things, not within the Afrocentric piece, but I just want to talk about the journey within the department. And I recognize it changes the process. So Scott talked a little bit about the practice framework. And one of the things that it recognized, and I really like the point that he talked about, rather than doing, is allowing families and youth and community to be part of that. And one of the things that I want to say that is very positive is that the language have changed. Rather than saying child protection, it is child family well-being. And I really like that because we, the department, recognize that it is family and community that keeps children and families safe. And how do we braid together with the child and family well-being unit is asking them, what's in your community? What's in your family? What supports do you have that can help you to mitigate whatever issue that has been identified that places your child at risk or your youth at risk? So I don't have any further information to provide at this time, but I certainly would have any of you to reach into me to ask more questions. I can come out again and talk about the Afrocentric Child and Family Wellbeing team. I think I just want to put a plug in. I think years ago, I did make a presentation to at the Mound and hoping that we would continue, but things do happen. But we're now back on track where we can connect. And myself and my 2 specialists don't mind coming out, talking to individually. One of the things that I would like to say is that looking for people of African descent who are professionals to come on as service providers, and I can provide that information to anybody on this call. If you know anybody that would like to do some private work within the department, so that services, we can have more culturally attentive service providers. I can provide that information later. Thank you.
Thank you all for such a great presentation and insightful knowledge sharing with us. I will call on Diane, Director of Programs now, to help us lead the questions and answer sessions. Thank you all very much. Yeah, we have a lot of questions in the chat, like Scott already mentioned. Over to you, Diane.
Or is it Auntie Toyin?
It's Diane. Did she leave?
No, she's still logged in. She must have just stepped out quickly. So should we?
Can we use time to recognize our sponsors that sponsor the program, please?
Yes, please.
While waiting for Diane, Auntie Fumi, recognize our sponsors. Thank you.
Okay, we're really grateful for the collaboration of the Department of Community Services to lend their expertise to the seminar this morning. Thank you, thank you. And we're also very grateful to Nova Scotia Labor Skills and Immigration, LSI, for their funding support of this organization to enable us to do this work and provide this type of information and educational sessions to our community. Thank you. Diane is back. Okay. Over to you, Diane.
Sorry, Auntie Fumi. I had to let a dog out, so apologies to everyone. My grandson. So if I missed, can you just repeat, Auntie Fumi?
This is the question and answer sessions. You'll have a lot of questions in the chat. You help us moderate to ensure that all the questions are answered, and the questions we have too that we've created so that we know that some of so clarity is provided for us on some of the issues where we would like some answers to.
No problem, Auntie Fumi. Would you like for me to put our questions as well into the chat? How would you like us to do that? Because there are quite a few questions already in the chat.
We can start with the chat ones, and then we also do our own questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So thank you, everyone. That was such an informative session. I'm going to start off with the first question. Actually, I believe it was my question. Can you please, and this could be to any one of you, can you please define negligence based on the department's definition?
Can I answer that, please? Okay, so in the context of child and family well-being, neglect will be a situation where parents, caregivers, or any individual that has been entrusted with the provision of safety and care for children fail in their duties to provide this adequately. So we have like physical neglect, emotional neglect, and medical neglect. Like we've had reports of children coming to school during extreme weather conditions without appropriate clothing, like coming to school during serious winter period without socks, without winter jackets, and that would be neglectful on the part of the parents for not providing adequate clothing for such a child. And we've had reports of children coming to school without food, without their lunch, and we'll be wondering like, oh, what's going on at home? Is there any situation happening in the home that we need to investigate and save their support? That will go to the intake team anyways, but those are the reports that we get. And medical neglect, there was a time I got this referral of a teenager that had some mental health issues. They were connected to the IWK and to other services to support this teenager, and the parent refused to follow up with this appointment. Serious consequent appointments were made, and the parents were not following up with this child. And so that would be considered as medical neglect. So any action or any situation that a caregiver that has been entrusted with the provision of care and support for a child is failing in their duties to provide this care will be considered as neglect.
Okay. May I ask one more question, Sylvia, as a follow-up to that question? For example, you brought about the situation of clothing.
Mm-hmm.
As a newcomer that's being integrated into community, say those resources, being the winter clothing, was not available during your intake, how much of that information is taken into consideration in terms of, is there a script? How are questions? I think I'm really interested in how questions are framed, because I will speak from experience as well, that it can be a very scary situation for any parent, especially as a newcomer, to be placed in front of someone from a department or an institute regarding something that you've done wrong. So I'm just curious, being trauma-informed, restorative, and culturally sensitive, how is that framed so that, you know, especially as a newcomer, that you're not feeling that you are faulting as a parent, but it could be a socio-economic issue. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll speak from the screening perspective. You know, we don't do investigations, we get this report. And when we have these referrals, we try as much as possible to gather relevant information about the families. If they are newly immigrant, if they are new immigrants, when did they arrive? Well, what do they know about the parents? Are they working? Are they not working? So all of this information, we try as much as possible to get adequate information so that the intake team will have enough information to work with. So when it goes to the intake, they do the investigations. They talk to these people. They have this one-on-one interaction with the parents. So they will frame the question, bearing in mind the cultural perspective, the anti-oppressive lens.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
If I can add something to what Sylvia said, when we go, I'm also speaking from the intake perspective. We to determine if this is substantiated or not, we call collaterals. We talk to teachers, for instance, using that child who came in without a proper clothing. We'll ask the school if they have noticed this, you know, for how long. So the school will have to be interviewed. The specific teacher to this child will be interviewed. We will also speak to professionals. You know, for instance, has there been any incidents of medical neglect from the family doctor, whereby family doesn't have a family doctor? The family will be asked to give 2 community members who we can talk to. Like I alluded before, while talking to some community members, you might even end up getting another referral as a result of, oh, I usually see them in church, not wearing specific clothes. I've seen this case, you know, not properly, you know, multiple stuff. So this family, they are the one who gave us the contact of who to call. In the process, you find out that these referrals are pure cases of child negligence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I see Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things. First, when our social workers come out to homes, they're coming out with information that's been presented to us. And, you know, it's part of their role is to determine, you know, is that information true or not? You know, they shouldn't be coming there with a preconceived notion that the information is true, right? It's their role, you know, and Chitty specifically, you know, as an intake social worker, to come out and, you know, speak to the children, speak to the family, speak to everybody possible to determine, you know, is there risk? Is there something we can do to help the family situation? So it's not all just about you know, that information that has come to us to quote unquote investigate, right? It's information that we need to come out and you know, determine, you know, is there risk? Is there not risk? Right. One of the questions in the last question that came out was around differentiating between affordability and neglect. And one thing that I always say is that, you know, poverty is not neglect. Right. And we need to be very clear with that. I believe our staff understand that, they see that, you know, and we have resources, you know, for example, if we, you know, go to a home where, you know, there's not adequate clothing, then we have the ability to help support that family financially. We can help, you know, align them with supports in the community to do that. So in those situations, you know, it may be a case where they just can't afford, you know, proper clothing. Or it could be a case where, you know, the family the parents are spending their money on drugs or alcohol and not buying things. So it's a matter of us to try to go out and determine, what's causing that. And if it's because of finances and poverty, then, we'll do whatever we can to help that situation. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Scott. And that's actually a really great differentiation. And I think that's important to be able to understand the socioeconomic factors versus actual neglect. Thank you so much. I'm not able to see whose hands went first. So I see
Toyan's hands was first.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I know that there are questions still in the chat, but I have a question and I don't know who can answer this. So assuming I have a teenager at home, and let's use, for example, a 15-year-old. He's not listening or she's not listening. She's coming back late at night. I've tried to do all I can in terms of rules and punishments, like that is adequate. And this child is still not listening to me. They're not doing well in class. They're not going to school. They're missing classes. And I've tried everything within my resources and within the community, asked family to speak to them. Before they get into any trouble that is irreversible, like where can that parent go for assistance? And I don't know if that is because, to me, is that I don't know if somebody is then going to report and the child is we're going to go into the process, or do I self-report? So that's my question.
Thank you so much.
Can people hear me? I can't.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
it's Ann Simmons. Tori, I'd like to turn into on that question. One of the things, and we do get a call where parent is saying, I have a youth, they're 15, they're not going to school. I think they're hanging out with people that, doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I'm looking out for them, inconsistent in school. One of the programs I've told people about is the prevention early intervention, and they have the specialists within those programs that talk about the different youth program where a file doesn't need to be open. And I don't have the information in front of me. Just came into my office since a week ago, and I don't have it in front of me, but there is prevention early intervention where there's no child and family well-being file open, but services, they can point you to services where that youth can you can get some support from within the community. But I don't have it right at my hand tip right now.
Thank you, Anne. And would that information be online by any chance? Or
I don't know if it's online, Diane, but certainly if it's something that I can follow up with Monday and send it out to your association, it would be from the prevention early intervention side of things.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Vicky, can you assist me with whose hands went up, please? Thank you.
We'll go to Gabriel.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, I was going to respond to the issue between poverty and neglect, not the question that was raised by Auntie Toyin. What I was just going to say, just to collaborate with what Scott has already said, is that what I tell my clients when I visit them, it doesn't matter whether you are poor or you can afford certain things. We all have similar experience. I can relate with people who are poor, but there is a difference between being poor and prioritizing your children. If you can learn to prioritize them, it doesn't matter whether you feed them with the same meal every day. You just have to prioritize them. Make sure that they are well dressed. Make sure that you take them to school, and you create an environment like your living situation, your parenting strategy, your support network, and your ability to proactively think about potential risk that may happen to this kid. That will take care of all the neglect. It's not how superb you are or how rich you are. It's just learn to prioritize them.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you. If there are no other hands up, I'm going to go to the next questions. And actually, Chidi, this is for you specifically. What happens to the families that do not have family members that can take in their children temporarily while the investigation is still going on? Would a family friend be an option? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Family friend is usually an option, family friend, community members, and whereby this family doesn't have any of such, the offending parents will have to leave the home for the services to be done. So the offending parents may ask to leave the home. Just like Scott and Hannah alluded, the intention is to keep families together. So an apprehension or removing the children is usually the last start, to happen. Even if family friend, or it's maybe when these children are being removed, they will make sure the foster care are also culturally appropriate where they will be, so they will be able to have contacts with their root.
Can I add, it could be anybody in the child and family community that has a relationship with the child also. It could be a godparent, it could be a neighbor also.
I think Gabriel might want to add.
Yes, thank you. I can just, I don't know, I can add to what has been said already. With the long-term protection unit, usually that question really come out when we're dealing with the safety plan. Because when we have a child protection concern, the first thing we want to do is that how can we establish a safety plan that will be strictly adhered to by the parties involved, the parent. So when we removed the one party, just like Chidi has rightly pointed out, we want to make sure that you can provide us with a third party that can look after the child in order to mitigate whatever concern that we're looking into, we're dealing with, to identify, to take care of it. So the question we usually ask is the name of the person that you are putting forward, the address, and the date of birth in order to do a background check, whether that person also does not have any child protection concern. And if that person passes, then we can give the child to that person to take care of. And sometimes the background check might come up that the person has some outstanding issue themselves, and we would not be able to do that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gabriel. And actually, the next questions are for you. The next question. When the case is closed, are there times when there is a need for the social worker to check in with the family to see whether everything is now okay and the family is definitely back on a good track? What happens if there is a regression? Thank you.
All right. What we do is before the case is closed, we will have already done that. We will have maintained contact with families and service providers to ensure that services are benefiting to the families are put in place. So we will not place the cat before the horse. We will make sure that you have those. You are doing well. You've cooperated. You've shown some insights, and then you have done the work. Then the file will be closed. And when the file is closed, just like Chidi has rightly mentioned, we give you a letter that the file is closed. We have no dealing with you. You are independent. You can function now independently. But there are occasions where a file is closed and then the concern resurfaced again in another referral. And then we start all over again. I don't know if I've answered that question, but when the file is closed, it is closed. You can go on with your life independently. But if you relapse, then there is another, we get a call, and then the concern is investigated and substantiated. Then you are back. You may be back straight, to the long-term unit, or you are back with the intake.
So Gabriel, just help me understand. So when you say about starting again, do you mean that, as you said now, from the intake or the screening, so would there be a screening process, follow up by the intake? Is that what you are meaning when you say start again?
All over again. That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I see that we have a few other questions. And Auntie Fumi, I'm mindful of time. So with your advice, how would you like me to progress? Go on to the next few questions?
I just see that we have 10 more minutes, such an engaging session. Maybe we take 2 more questions, and then because I don't know if our panelists have time. If they do, then maybe we can go till 10:05 and enable us to answer two or three more questions. Yeah. Thank you. I will hate to stop this dynamic. Yeah.
Yes, and then I was also thinking, if we don't get through all the questions, just in respect of everyone and wanting responses, if it's okay with our panelists, we could put together the questions that are still unanswered and maybe send it to you to look over and perhaps send us some response so that we can at least have that if someone should want to come back, if that's okay. So I'll move on to the next 2 questions. As African social workers, how are you influencing your team and the department as a whole to determine what is a real child abuse in an African setting? And I'd leave that open to any one of you. Thank you so much.
I'm going to speak. We
Thank
are
you.
very unique people. As an African Nova Scotian and people of African descent, in which I proudly walk into, we need to be mindful of our uniqueness. There's things, our lived experience are different, but yet unique. And I think we need to recognize that. And how do we braid it together respectfully? And because my experience with Fumi is totally different. But you know what? Having that conversation with her over the years spoke about our uniqueness and how we can step in for one another when we are at need. How do we do that? And, you know, doing this work in the past, I went to the community. I went to the new immigrant community, say, look, I don't know this. You know, from a societal piece, it appears that we should have the answers. But I had to lean into the Fumis of the world and Josephines of the world and say, look, who in your community that can help the department with this family or with this youth? And then I created a case plan where I brought those individuals in to help out. So I think we still can do that in terms of asking those unique experience, who we are, family of African descent, new immigrants, new Canadians, and those who lived here all their lives. How do we braid that together respectfully?
Thank you so much, Anne.
I think I can add into what and Simeons have said. I agree that we are unique people, but at the same time, I guess what the question is such that what is it's a question of culture, you know, understanding what abuse is in your cultural setting. So regardless of who you are, I think my advice would be that try to focus on teaching and not punishment. You know, try to focus on teaching and not punishment. You will go a long way if you can educate yourself about the cultural values of where you are, and then you educate your children based on that. And that's my contribution. Focus on teaching rather than punishment, because some of the concerns, some of the child protection concern that we have is excessive discipline. It's not that you cannot discipline your child because you are from Africa, or because you are from anywhere that is culturally different from Canada. But what you want you to do is that when you are here, you have to make sure that you focus on teaching your children how to behave appropriately rather than just, exercising punishment at all time.
So that actually ties in really nicely with the next question.
Okay.
Is there anything in place for newcomers to be orientated to the laws that govern their methods of discipline in regards to their children, to avoid all these strategies that are in place to remove a child from their families? So it in a way, it ties in with what you're saying, Gabriel, but I'm wondering, from the newcomer perspective, where's that information? How can we access it? And how can we educate ourselves so that we are aware of what are the social norms in this country and the laws that govern how we parent outside of our cultural nuances? Thank you. So this could be to anyone. Thank you.
I know years ago, ISAN used to do that piece for newcomers, and I don't know if they're doing it anymore, because it used to be on a monthly basis, and I know that workers have gone and made presentations around the Child and Family Well Act. But I don't know if they're doing it anymore. I think that would be the key place to start for newcomers.
Yeah, I don't think we are doing that currently, Anne. I was at a meeting a couple of months ago, and that topic came up, and where my mind went was if we could create some type of document that would be, would come from us, but would be located within community groups such as ISANS, and that just to so that they can pass out, so people don't have to come to the department to learn that information. So yeah, so we're going to circle back to that and see what we can develop. But as of right now, there's nothing currently that I'm aware of that's existing.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I don't find my hand raised button, but I just wanted to jump in on what Scott said. There are two things. We will really appreciate that document you're going to pull together, because it's going to be very helpful, because people get into trouble, quote unquote, because they're not aware of what they should do. So we don't want to fault parents based on not knowing, because that's what they know, especially as a newcomer. And two, you piqued my interest when you said there's going to be consultation with revising the policies or guidelines earlier in your presentation in 2024, that the current one is from 2018 or so. So we will appreciate us as a stakeholder group that we're consulted for input into what the new policy would look like, or guidelines. We have a lot of professionals amongst the group, in addition to our lived experiences, and I think there's value we can bring to the table in those discussions to help inform what the new policy will look like, and that will be appropriate for everybody, if I can use that word, quote unquote. So thank you. And we look forward to getting that guideline. So it's not just ISAN out there, please. That's UACWA too. Thank you.
And to add to Auntie Fumi, we can even do it in different languages, because we need to reach out to the immigrant, refugee, especially people that are illiterate in English, so that they will understand, and know what the laws are to govern them where they now live. Thank you.
We have two hands up. Mary?
Thank you.
Hi. I just wanted, I guess, some input if the case arises again for me. I think it's a matter of language barrier. So my question is the school, like, if is the school supposed to report something without getting a full picture, or are they supposed to talk to the parent to see? Because the incident that I was somehow found myself in trying to help somebody is to help with the understanding, and I had to quickly do the research on social work, which I have no idea about, to help this family. So I guess that's my question, because the school never let her know, and somebody just showed up in the house and I was called. And it was a very scary situation for me, and I just want to prevent that again from happening. So what are the guidelines I should say? Because I'm pretty sure that parents needs to be informed somehow, as opposed to being presented with the scary notice for no prior notice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
I can start to answer that one if you wish, and then if anybody wants to jump in. Yeah, as I think it was Sylvia that mentioned a duty to report, Chitty as well. But like everybody in this province has as an obligation legally, and I think morally as well, to report any type of concerns of child abuse or neglect. Professionals such as school teachers, have a higher obligation under our legislation to report child abuse and neglect. So obviously that does occur where teachers, we'll use teachers as the example from your question, they do call us and call us first. And in my role, I have work with other departments, and education is one of them. And one of the things that I'm trying to impress upon the folks at the Department of Education is, we get a lot of calls from them where they should probably be calling the parent, first, or calling the parent and maybe not even calling us. I've been quite blunt about this fact that I find that if it's a white middle class or white upper class family, the school is calling them. Where if it's a family that is not white, is a poorer family, they're calling us. Teachers are calling, schools are calling us rather than calling that family and working through that. So, we've been trying to do a little bit of education with, a lot of education with schools to say, these are the situations you should be reaching out to families about, not to us, because once we get involved, then, our actions start to kick in, and it may not be the best experience for that family, where if the school will call them, about whatever the situation is, unless it is risk, and unless it is a child has been harmed, then yeah, they do have to call us. And then once we go, as Chitty mentioned, we have the ability under our legislation, to go to the school first and speak to a child, and then go to the home unannounced. I encourage families to make sure cooperate with us. We should not be coming to your home, pointing a finger, blaming you for something where we should be gathering information from the beginning, and try to determine, is it true or is it not true? How can we help? What can we do? Is there supports in the community? So, but yeah, teachers, like other professionals, have that obligation to call us, and then if it's something that we need to intervene on, then we have the obligation that we need to go to people's homes. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Scott. Mary, is that okay in terms of a response? Because I have two questions for Scott, and I know I want to be mindful of time.
Yeah, it's okay. It's just that the thing that I missed is the fact that this is not a regular thing. I feel like they should be observant, like the person must have fallen or something happened that one time and they didn't follow through and they just went straight to calling it. But if it's a behavior that they see often, then I think that is merited, because that was a mere simple accident. In fact, whatever happens in school was never reported, but that one accident was reported, which I didn't think it made sense to me. That's all. But yes, it did cover some of the aspects. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Mary. So Scott,
Can I add something here as an educator myself? Because I've had the question about teachers reporting some and not reporting some. I think that there should be clear clarification in terms of duty to report and discriminatory or choice of which to report and which not to report. As somebody in education, we're obligated to report any sign or suspicion of child abuse or report anything a child reports to you. You have under duty to report regulation. You do not have to contact the parent. You do not have to discuss with anybody else. You just have to report to DCS. They carry out the investigation. It's so different from individuals within the system deciding to report or deciding to contact some families they believe probably should know. So I want to put that out. The duty to report does not give educators that right to contact families before they report.
And I just want to add to what
Thank
Bernard
you.
said. As an intake supervisor, as an intake investigator, I've gotten report from schools, and I've gone into family homes and I provided families with resources in terms of with this discretionary funding we have in intake. We provided support to families, support like car seats, support like heating, wood for the heating homes, and some other support. So sometimes there are valid report. There are still some report that comes in from the school through the screening that will not be investigated. So duty to report covers, they don't have to contact families. They have to report based on how the child reported. And as an intake investigator, it's usually very domineering when you go into parents' house and you knock on the door and come in and just interview their kids at school. They could have alcohol in the living room. They could have broken stuff. So those are common, some kind of site. And I've gone into family homes. I went to the basement and I saw marijuana plants, multiple marijuana plants, in the room. So those are a lot of concerns. So you may even go in and there'll be multiple referrals. So it's as an immigrant, it's usually, very domineering when you walk into some immigrant homes or African of exclusion's home, So the essence is for us to provide an insight, yes, social workers may have bad history, but we are here to support you as a family. Thank you.
Thank you, Chidi. So I'm just again mindful of time, and I want to thank you all so very much for the questions answered and for those that have posted their questions. And I'm going to hand it back over to Auntie Fumi. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll call on Benny to give a vote of thanks for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been one of the most valuable seminars or workshops that we've been involved with. And lots and lots of valuable information was shared today. And we owe this opportunity and thanks to Department of Labor and Service Skills and Immigration for providing the fund. Department of Community Services, especially Child Protective and Family Wellbeing, for volunteering their time, especially on a Saturday with nice weather we're looking at, to be out here to give us this wonderful, cherishable type of information. I can't say enough about the value of what we heard today, the extent of information that was shared today. We heard so much about the rights, protective rights of children and families, not only having the rights, hearing about their rights and the responsibilities. We also know that knowledge is power. The information that was shared today will help our community, families, parents to know exactly the resources that are out there and also the support that is out there for families. And most importantly, to understand that there is strong encouragement to be proactive in ensuring your well-being, the well-being of your family and your children. And to top the icing on the cake is, it's not just the information and the resources, just to know that there is cultural lens being applied in these services is so heartwarming, because for years, people of African descent have been entangled with community services, which, you know, acknowledgedly was very unintuned with the needs of people of African descent and the cultural implications of the policies that were being implemented. So to hear now that, you know, those areas of concern is being looked at and being taking active steps to ensure that people of African descent and their families and their children are also being considered in delivering the services that are meant to protect and provide to support the well-being of all families. So it's very heartwarming to hear all this information. In addition to that, it demystifies the myths and the facts about social services. It's like telling our students in school, police is your friend and not your enemy. Today, we're hearing again and again, social services, child protective services should not be your enemy. They're there to ensure that you and your families, your children are taken care of and supported in a very proactive, specific way, which means that you are not just being seen as parent who is very negligent, who is not doing the right thing. There is all kinds of insights as to why things are happening the way they are happening. And these are the resources that we have for you, and we encourage you to take it. So in conclusion, I would like to say a big thank you to not just the founders, the Department of Labor Skills and Immigration, but special thank you to Department of Community Services, especially the Child Protective Division. And wonderfully, a special thank you to UACWA for taking this on, and the committee that put this together is one of the most valuable workshops that we've done in a long time, and kudos to the committee, that Family Matters Committee with UACWA that put this together. So thank you so much, everyone, the participants who dropped everything to join in to receive this wonderful presentation and information. We really appreciate that, and we look forward to continually working together to support our communities and the department also. So thank you everyone for coming out today. Really appreciate that. And in conclusion, do not forget that the Director of Afrocentric Child and Family Wellbeing, has given UACWA the go-ahead to ensure that everybody in our community that wants access to reaching has that access. So we'll be posting her full contact and information on our social platforms for all our family community members, just in case you need it. But please be proactive, and that's the key message we got today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Have a
day.
blessed day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone from LA.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.